Now, now today we are going to do both chapters so we can finish today, and you can have a summer break. We were able to do that this morning because, as I said, chapter 36 is just about
The sons and the grandsons.
the descendants of Esau, and so they're not as important. And I'm not going to get you to read that, so don't worry. I don't want to. I don't want to test your skills in reading biblical names.
I practiced.
All right. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for your word. We ask as we seek to discern it, that you will grant us knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that we may be able to learn and to read and to mark and to digest it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Give me 1 second. All right. Now, today we're going to read chapters 34 and 35. Do we have any readers? At least two. If one wants to read chapter 34, I see George's hand. And somebody to read chapter 35, I see Marilyn. So, George, you read chapter 34. Marilyn, you read chapter 35.
Okay.
You can handle it both, I presume. Okay.
Dinah, the daughter whom Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit some of the women in the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, who was chief of the region, saw her, he seized her and lay with her by force. Since he was strongly attracted to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, indeed was really in love with the girl, he endeavored to win her affection. Shechem also asked his father Hamor, get me this girl for a wife. Meanwhile, Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dinah. But since his sons were out in the fields with his livestock, he held his peace until they came home. Now Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to discuss the matter with Jacob, just as Jacob's sons were coming in from the fields. When they heard the news, the men were shocked and seethed with indignation. What Shechem had done was an outrage in Israel. Such a thing could not be tolerated. Hamor appealed to them, saying, my son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you can live among us. The land is open before you. You can settle and move about freely in it, and acquire landed property here. Then Shechem too appealed to Dinah's father and brothers. Do me this favor, and I will pay whatever you demand of me. No matter how high you set the bridal price, I will pay you whatever you ask. Only give me the maiden in marriage. Jacob's sons replied to Shechem and his father Hamor with guile, speaking as they did, because their sister Dinah had been defiled. We could not do such a thing, they said, as to give our sister to an uncircumcised man. That would be a disgrace for us. We will agree with you only on this condition, that you become like us by having every male among you circumcised. Then we will give you our daughters and take yours in marriage. We will settle among you and become one kindred people with you. But if you do not comply with our terms regarding circumcisions, we will take our daughter and go away. The proposal seemed fair to Hamor and to his son Shechem. The young man lost no time in acting in the matter, since he was deeply in love with Jacob's daughter. Moreover, he was more highly respected than anyone else in his clan. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to their town council and thus presented the matter to their fellow townsmen. These men are friendly toward us. Let them settle in the land and move about it freely. There is ample room in the country for them. We can marry their daughters and give our daughters to them in marriage. But the men will agree to live with us and form one kindred people with us only on this condition, that every male among us be circumcised as they themselves are. Would not the livestock they have acquired, all their animals, then be ours? Let us therefore give in to them, so that they may settle among us. All the able-bodied men of the town agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and all the males, including every able-bodied man in the community, were circumcised. On the third day, while they were still in pain, Dinah's full brothers, Simeon and Levi, two of Jacob's sons, took their swords and advanced against the city without any trouble, and massacred all the males. After they had put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword, they took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. Then the other sons of Jacob followed up, slaughtered, and sacked the city in reprisal for their sister Dinah's defilement. They seized their flocks, herds, and asses, whatever was in the city and in the country around. They carried off all their wealth, their women and their children, and took loot wherever it was housed. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble upon me by making me loathsome to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. I have so few men that, if these people unite against me and attack me, I and my family will be wiped out." But they retorted, "Should our sister have been treated like a harlot?"
Then God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves, and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell upon the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. Jacob and all the people with him came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan, and there he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel, because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Bethel. So it was named Elon Bakuth. After Jacob returned from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. And God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will come from your body. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from him at the place where he had talked with him. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel. Then they moved on from Bethel, and while they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. And as she was having a great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, "Don't be afraid, for you have another son." As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Over her tomb, Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day, that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Israel moved on again and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. Jacob had 12 sons. The sons of Leah, Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Rachel's maidservant, Bilhah, Dan, and Naphtali. The sons of Leah's maidservant, Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob, who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kiriath Abba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him.
Thank you both very much. So what we have now is, if you remember in chapter 33, at the end of chapter 33, verses 18 to 20, Jacob arrived at the city of Shechem, which is in Canaan, and he camped there. And he also bought a piece of the property for 100 pieces of silver. And he bought that from the sons of Hamor. And when they call him the father of Shechem, the person who they're referring to Shechem was probably not his name, because Shechem is the name of the place. But for whatever reason that name is used, although the father's name is Hamor. But Jacob bought the place. He arrived at Shechem. Let me see if I have a map so you can see quickly. Hold 1 second. Let's see here. Let's see here. That's not what I want. That's that. Where's the other one I'm looking for?
I have a footnote that says he was probably named after the city.
Yeah, so it's quite possible he could have been. That is quite possible as well. But it was certainly the name of the city. Let's do this. Good. All right. Let's see. Can I share, Pam? Oh, yeah, I think so. Great. Thank you. Can you all see that?
Not yet.
There it is.
Good. So what you see here, you see two little red lines. One that starts at the bottom there by Beersheba, and it goes right up to Haran. And that is the route that Jacob is supposedly have taken from Beersheba, where he was, up to Haran. Now, the next line on the right is on his return from Haran to and you will see that it stops, the arrow points and stops at Shechem. He did not at first return back to Beersheba. He stops at Shechem, where we are talking about. Can you see? Everyone can see that? Right.
It's
So
awfully
that is
small.
so. Hmm?
Yeah, it's kind of small, but I can see it.
It's
Let
kinda
me see if I
small.
can make. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Hold on one second.
Or you can use your pointer.
Can you see that?
That's better.
That's
Yeah,
better.
that's better.
Right. So he comes down and he stops there at Shechem, where you see the arrow is pointed to that little black dot. Um, that is Shechem. And one of the things that we have to realize is that, remember, his grandfather Abraham had also come from Haran down to Shechem, and that was the first place that Abraham stopped when he came from the same Haran. Where Laban and that family was. So Shechem, what you see is Jacob was repeating his grandfather's journey from Haran to the land that God had promised them. So that is one thing I wanted you just to point out to you. And so what happens is you are getting in chapter 34, you heard about the son somewhat. Now you're getting a taste of Dinah. And you know, as some people will say, and please don't shoot me, ladies, but as some people will say, sometimes the daughters give you the gray hairs. And you see there's a whole lot of trouble going on here in this episode. Now let's start in chapter 34. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. And remember, Jacob had 12 sons and he had one daughter, and the daughter was from Leah. And when Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and raped her. Anyone else Bible said something else besides raped?
Violated.
Violated? Anybody else?
No, I have rape.
You have rape. And the thing
Uh,
is, and the thing about it is, and the reason why I asked that question is
They
that
were by force.
Yeah. Georgia says, go ahead.
Mine said lay with her by force.
okay. And you see, the thing is about it is, again, there is always that how should I put it? There's always some doubt as to whether or not it was by force, whether or not it was consensual. And the reason being is that in those days, you could not, you were not, men were not supposed to have sexual intercourse with some person who's a virgin, a woman who is a virgin, even if she was okay in doing so. And so it is one of those situations where uh, I'm trying to think carefully how to put this, but he had sexual intercourse with her, and as far as the law would have been at that time, is that he could not or he should not have had any intercourse with her since she was a virgin. That was what would have been the practice. And remember that this time, Abraham and Jacob and these folks, they were not called Israelites yet. they were Armenians, and so that would have been the custom of Armenians, was that the parents were the one who arranged the marriages. The girl can refuse. She had the right of refusal, but it was the family's prerogative to make the selection of a husband or a wife, and therefore. Um, 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 it was not the normal thing for a man to have laid with a girl as a virgin without marrying her first. And then you will find that in the laws, when it came then to the laws of the Sinai covenant, um, um, the punishment for a man taking advantage of a virgin meant that the man had to marry the girl. It was virtually automatic, and he also had to pay a certain fine or give a certain gift to the girl's father. And one of the other stipulations was that as long as he lived, he could not divorce her. That was one of the other stipulations on the Sinai law, covenant law. So not only not only did you have sexual intercourse with a virgin or with a girl before marrying her, but you had no choice but to marry her. You had to pay, I think it was 50 silver shekels or something in those days, and you could not divorce her. And I think you could find that in Deuteronomy chapter 22, I think it is. So those were the kinds of stipulations. As I told the others this morning, I could stop sharing this now for the time. But as I told the others this morning, I know in Barbados, and then someone also told me it was the same here in the States, that if you as a man had sexual intercourse with a girl and she became pregnant, you were compelled to marry this girl. That used to happen years ago in Barbados, and I understand it used to happen here in the States as well. Because obviously it was taboo for a girl to be not married and have a child in many years ago, and families used to do that. So here you are having probably a kind of a similar thing, which probably came out of what used to happen in Barbados and here, and I'm sure in other countries, came out of that context as well. So then in verse 3, his heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father, Hamor, get me this girl as my wife. So yes, one may say he did a stupid thing by having intercourse with her, but you get this impression as you read along, he was really in love with this girl. And when Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock. So he did nothing about it until they came home. And we wonder, well, why did Jacob not dealt with it right away? Although you will find that he does go, and the father went to talk to Jacob instead of Jacob going to talk to the father. Whereas Jacob needed to talk to the father about why his daughter was defiled, the father of Shechem was coming to say, I want your daughter for my son. And you will see that happening in verse 6. But in terms of why Jacob would have been silent or did not go out to speak about this and waiting for the children, his sons, to come home, it is quite possible he did not want to face Hamor over this defilement of his daughter, and therefore probably was awaiting to see what his sons will have to say about Shechem's actions. In verse 6, you see then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob, and meanwhile Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they heard what had happened, and they were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. So we have established that that was against the rules at that time, the law at that time. But Hamor said to them, my son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife, and to marry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. And then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife. So you can tell that this is a man who is smitten by this girl and is willing to virtually do anything to get her. And so here you see that the father puts a plea for his son first, and then after he does that, then the son makes his own plea as well to have Dinah's hand in marriage. And then after that happens, Jacob's sons take over. You see now that Jacob is silent about this, and his sons now take over the negotiations. And one of the things that you will see out of this text, that yes, they're talking about Dinah, but really and truly, Dinah is not really treated with the kind of, what's the word I want? Respect, that they really care about her. It becomes, I mean, Dinah is the victim, and it seems as if she is being overlooked, that she isn't being consulted, she isn't being comforted, and really and truly, one may even may get the impression that she is just being disrespected as much as she was disrespected by this man named Shechem. So you see here in verse 13, because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, we can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That will be a disgrace to us. We will enter into an agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go. So here is an agreement now, and one will think that the agreement was genuine, because remember, God had made a covenant with Abraham that all Jewish men were to be circumcised. That was made, I think, back out in Genesis chapter 12, if my mind serves me correctly. And so you will think, well, it may be an appropriate agreement. Mind you, however, these people were not Jews. Now, whether they get circumcised, that makes them Jews. Yeah, probably. But the thing is about it is, it would be still, you can tell from what they're saying that they don't mean what they're saying, because we are told that they replied deceitfully. There was deceit in what they were saying. Probably they felt that they would not have wanted to be circumcised. Maybe that might have shocked them. I don't know at this point in time. And therefore they would have gotten back Dinah, or or obviously, were they planning, as you will realize, what takes place later on is one of the most horrific things that happened in the Bible at that time, in that were they planning that if they were circumcised, they were going out to get them. So was there premeditated murder on their part in this whole scenario? However, we know that they were deceitful in what they were planning on doing. And so the proposal was made. And in verse 18, their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. And the young man, who was the most honored of all his father's family, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city. And in speaking to the men of their city, they claimed that these men are friendly towards us. They said, yeah, right. That's what Shechem and Hamor believe. Let them live in our land and trade in it. Mind you, remember, Jacob had also bought a piece of the land already. So that is to be put into perspective as well. Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours, but the men will agree to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they themselves are. Once their livestock, their property, and all other animals become ours. So let us agree to their terms, and they will settle among us. And you find then in verse 24, all the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. So obviously you see here, this is the king and the prince talking. The people, the men in the city had respect for them, and therefore they were in agreement with what Hamor and Shechem were the demands that they were making, so that they can become one people. Did I see somebody's hand just now? No? Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead, Pam.
A long time ago. I was just gonna say,
I'm sorry.
that's right. She wasn't even there. You know,
Hmm?
they ignored her, but she wasn't even there.
No, she wasn't there. They've totally ignored her.
Yeah.
It was like she's the victim and nobody is caring about her. They're
Right.
just making these arrangements by themselves
Right,
without
right.
her knowledge or her input or her anything. Yes, yes.
I had
They
a-
were more or less like disrespecting her. Yes, Susan.
Well, they were kind of deceitful too, because they were gonna take all the property and the animals become theirs, so they were hoping to gain.
Well, yes, and that you will
So-
see later down in the
Yeah.
chapter that is what they do. And that's why he said, was it premeditated, as we will call it today, premeditated murder, if they had all along planned what they were going to do with these guys.
Well, it says, won't their livestock and property be theirs? Wasn't that Hamor saying that?
Say that again?
Wasn't Hamor saying that? Won't their livestock and property be ours? So they were hoping to gain.
No,
Well,
wait a minute, hold on.
22.
Oh yes. Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room. We can marry da. But the men
So Hamor saying, yeah, then we can get their property, right?
hold on. Well, Hamor was really saying that their land, let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We marry their daughters and they can marry ours. So verse 23, when their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours. So, right. So he
So
thought
they were-
that,
They were kind of
yes.
deceitful too. Okay.
Well, yes, in a way that is also true, that they were being deceitful. But the thing about it is that the way how the arrangement seemed to have been, and I'll tell you this. Let's go back a minute because you've brought up a good point. Because the way how the arrangement seemed was that they would all be mixing up and let's see if I can find that. Let's see here. Okay, there was no arrangement. The only arrangement that seemed to be was that they will aim to marry, give us daughters, and take our daughters for themselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. But you see here now that Hamor was adding something now when he was talking to his own people in his city that, when their livestock and their property and all the other animals become ours. So,
So he was,
there was that.
He-
There
he
was
was
a little bit
planning
of
on-
deceit there as well. Although we may want to say, who was he deceiving, them or the men? Because it would look like he was more or less deceiving the men, although he might have been deceiving Jacob and his people too. But to get the men to agree, the men of his
yeah.
of his community to agree to go along with this idea, remember that this idea only came about because a man loves a woman and he wants her at all
Yeah.
costs.
Okay.
And so it could have been that they added it in that so as to get the fellas on board to agree to this agreement. So yes, that is true, Susan. And you see then in verse 24 that all the men agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. There. Then now you see what happens as a result. In verse 25, 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, note the word three again. You know how that works. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi. Now remember that Simeon and Levi are Leah's boys, and they're sons number 2 and 3 of Jacob. Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? So see here now you have what is called the massacre of the Shemonites, and we see one of the most unjust and abhorrent acts that are recorded in the Old Testament. And I will tell you, and it is possible that they were also expecting Jacob or Dinah's family to come for the wedding feast, which was, where Jacob would have been given money for the bride and all of that good stuff, which is part of the reason why it could have been unprotected or the city was unprotected. But you will find that they murdered all of them. They claimed their sister. They pillaged the city. But the other brothers came and did this, which is the Jacob's sons. and obviously these women and children that they took would have been more or less their servants. As a result. So what you see here is a situation where killing Hamor and Shechem became an excuse for stealing the wealth of their neighbors. And the thing is about it is you can tell from what happened is that Hamor and Shechem saw them as friendly. They thought this was being done in good, and it was in good regard, and Jacob's sons turned it into something very bloody and very abhorrent, and also very unjust, and quite catastrophic, because here you have an entire region or community, virtually all the males are being wiped out as a result of this action. It causes Jacob to be obviously angry, knowing full well that they are in a minority, and that if the other Canaanites and Perizzites decide to team up after hearing what happened, that they are going to be slaughtered as well. And the boys are not looking at that. All the boys are looking at is, so should we have let them treat the sister as if she was a prostitute? Or I think George's book had harlot. One of the things too I wanted to I could mention it here, which you will find one the major reasons for the first three sons, because really and truly, when you look at it, when it comes to who should have carried on the promised line, the promised seed, one would think it would have been Reuben, since he was the firstborn, but he did not. And you will realize that later on that he didn't. When we read when we go through 35, and you would have read it just now, is that he slept with his father's concubine, and that was a no-no. You will see that when we get into chapter 35, verse 22, and you know that cut him from being that person in line. So too Simeon and Levi, because of what they did, their sons 2 and 3, because of what they did to Hamor and Shechem and the people of that community, they too lost their birthright to being the promised seed. Hence, then you come to Judah, who was the next child in line, the fourth child in line, and who was much more of a redemptive kind of guy. And that's how he becomes, the seed is passed through him. Any questions on chapter 34 before we move on? Yes, George.
So at this point, there's only 11 sons, right?
At this point, there's only 11 sons, correct.
And is the assumption all 11 took part in this slaughter?
We will have to, we are not sure. The likelihood of Joseph taking part is probably not. But we cannot be sure of that, because I'm not sure how old Joseph would have been at the time. He would probably have been still a pretty small kid, and therefore it would have been the sons of Leah and the servants that would have been taking part in this. They would have been older. And even remember, by the time when we get to Joseph, you could tell that Joseph is still a young lad. By the time the brothers sold him into Egypt, he is still a pretty young guy. So the chances of him being part of this, I don't think he would have been a part. I think it would have been more so Leah's sons and the servants' sons. They did not, as you realize, they just said, and the other brothers. Did it tell you how many of them there were? But you know that Simeon and Levi were the ringleaders. They were the ringleaders. And it is also quite possible, I mean, with the amount of thing that they did, I don't think that 10 sons could have done it. They had to have had other persons with them, their servants or whatever, helping them, I would presume. Although they're not mentioned. Any other questions? All right, let's go on to chapter 35. Now, you see now, remember that Jacob now is going to return to Bethel. Remember, he went to Bethel when he was running away from Esau. Now he's going to be running away from the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and God last time, it was the mother who sent him away. Now God is sending him away. From this, you see in verse 1 in chapter 35, then God said to Jacob, go up to Bethel and settle there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. So now he fled from Esau, and now he's going to be fleeing from the Canaanites and the Perizzites. So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had, and the rings in their ears. So now men used to wear rings before. Nowadays, as we think, is a new thing. That used to happen years ago. And Jacob buried them under the oak of Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. So here is that what Jacob is telling the whole household is, you need to have a cleansing. When we're going before God, we have to go clean. We have to go pure. We have to be cleansed. So we have to get rid of all the foreign gods. We got to make ourselves pure when we are going. Remember, when he left the first time, he had nothing. He took nothing. Now he's saying to them, the things like these foreign gods that are kind of disrespectful to the God that he serves, you need to get rid of all of those foreign gods. You wonder if at the time Rachel also got rid of those household gods that she had as well at the time, but it doesn't tell you if she did or not. But one could presume that she probably did. And also one of the things I would mention is I mentioned about men wearing earrings at the time, is that some of these gods, these foreign gods that they had, these household gods, some of them, those that were obviously in human form, those gods also used to wear rings in their ears as well. So I believe that is where they would have gotten that from. Verse 6, Jacob and all the people with him went to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. Then he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel, because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. So you realize here that he builds an altar, and also too that we need to realize in before I even talk about building the altar, that whole notion of the oak of Shechem is something that is mentioned before as well. And the reason it was mentioned before was because Abraham had also God had appeared to Abraham at the oak of Shechem earlier as well in chapter 12 of Genesis, after he had entered the promised land. So you could almost see that that Jacob and his grandfather. Jacob is doing similar things, or is called to do similar things as his grandfather. And you will remember that at that site of the oak of Shechem, that God had promised Abraham that he will become the father of many nations, of many descendants, at that same oak of Shechem. And I think also that Abraham had also built an altar at the oak of Shechem. So you see that mentioned before in Genesis. Now, in verse 8, Deborah, I don't think we ever heard her name. She was Rebekah's nurse, which means that she was an older woman, presumably than Rebekah. She died and was buried under the oak outside Bethel, and it was named Alon Bakuth. And this obviously, the phrase or the name Alon Bakuth means oak of tears or weeping. So it gives you the impression that this woman, this nurse, was well beloved by this family. It is quite possible she could have raised even Jacob and Esau as well. And therefore, she would have been the nurse that would have accompanied Rebekah when she came to become Isaac's wife, when she left Haran and came down to Canaan. So, and the fact that they're mentioning this tells you that she was really beloved by this family. And after Jacob returned from Padan Aram, which is Haran, really, God appeared to him again and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. We're unsure. Well, I am unsure, and I'm sure, and there's proof that others are unsure whether or not Jacob is being renamed by God a second time, or is God just reminding him, or is it that they're just alluding to it so that you will remember that his name is really Jacob? Or as someone said this morning, maybe he was still saying he's Jacob instead of Israel, and God had to tell him again, you're Israel and not Jacob any longer. But here we see that it seems as if there is some kind of reminder that God is reminding him that he is Israel and no longer Jacob. And you will find then that God goes into something that he did with Abraham and he also did with Isaac, which is kind of like a covenant relationship with Jacob. In verse 11, and God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I give to Abraham and Isaac I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from him at the place where he had talked with him. So you see here in verses 11, 12, and 13 that the same covenant that God shared with Abraham and Isaac, he now shares with Jacob, that he is going to be fruitful, and they're going to be multiplied, and then will multiply, that he's going to be a father of many nations, and that and you see here God renewing that promise to Jacob, which he first made to his grandfather Abraham. And then in verse 14, Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured out oil on it. And Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel. And so you see that he makes another offering to God there. And then we move, and it was And now we will see now the deaths of Rachel, both Rachel and Isaac, at this point. In verse 16, then they move on from Bethel while they were still some distance from Ephraim, and we know that Ephraim is also Bethlehem. Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. And as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, "Don't despair, for you have another son." And as she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Benoni, but the father named him Benjamin. Now, if you know, the term Benoni really meant son of my sorrow or suffering. And that is how, obviously, hi, Linda, that is how Rachel, knowing that she was dying, would have felt that this was the son of her suffering, the son of her sorrow. However, what you see here is that Jacob renames him Benjamin, which means son of the right hand or son of the south, meaning son of a happy omen. Whereas for Rachel, it was a bad omen. Now for Jacob, he wanted to see Benjamin as a happy omen. Obviously, remember, in spite of the fact that he's losing his favorite wife, he is at least having a son, another child from her, because all up to this time he had only one child from Rachel. So this for him was still a happy moment, even though he lost his wife. And so he calls him Benjamin, son of a happy omen. The other thing, did I see somebody's hand? Was I seeing your hand, Marilyn? No?
My footnote also indicates that Benjamin, the name can also mean son of the south.
Yeah, that's
In
why I mentioned
distinction
son of the
from
right
other
hand or son of
sons.
the south.
One set of Hebrew terms for indicating direction was based on facing east. So south was on the right.
Yeah. Yeah, there are three names: son of the right hand, son of the south, or son of a happy omen. That the name is meant to mean. One of the other significant things of where Rachel is buried is she's buried near Bethlehem, which is the birthplace of King David and the site where the prophet Micah had prophesied that the birthplace of the Messiah would be in Bethlehem. And we know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. So that is a kind of a significant thing for Rachel as well. And actually the site of Rachel's tomb is near Bethlehem is still holy for the Jews and even for Christians and Muslims as well. There's a reverence for her tomb. So in verse 19, so Rachel died and was buried on the way. We're in chapter 35, Linda, and at verse 19 now. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephraim, that is Bethlehem. Over her tomb, Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day that pillar means Rachel's tomb. Israel moved on again and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. And while Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. The name Migdal Eder means watchtower of the flock. The word Migdal was usually a fortified watchtower. I don't know if that's where the Jehovah Witnesses get their magazine, The Watchtower, from. It is quite possible because they have two they have two magazines that they give out to folks as part of their missionary work. One called The Watchtower, one called Awake. And so it is quite possible that they could have gotten that from that word. The other part is that when it comes to Reuben sleeping with his father concubine, you will find that in scripture, a son taking his father's concubine was more or less like a declaration of rebellion against his father. And so and it could also have meant that by committing such an act, that he could have been seen as making the attempt as the firstborn son and heir to usurp his father's authority over the tribe. And so, and as I mentioned earlier, because of this, he lost his position as the heir. And you will, and that pronouncement will be given by Jacob on his deathbed, which follows later. So you see here that because of because of Reuben committing this act, it caused him to not be in the running of the promised seed any longer. And we still saw the same thing with Simeon and Levi because of
Father, we can't hear you. We've lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yeah.
Okay. No, because my Bible is on my on my computer, so I can still try to keep a straight face, and so that is why. And I pressed one of the keys. Yeah.
Right.
So you see here that that what Reuben and Simeon and Levi did caused them to lose their position as heirs in line. They don't tell you anything more as a result of Reuben's actions. It goes straight into outlining who were Jacob's 12 sons, and you see them identified there, the sons of Leah, the sons of Rachel. It's interesting how Rachel's sons are mentioned second, although they are the last of the children. But obviously those were the wives as opposed to the concubines. The concubines' children are listed last. And it is also interesting in the listing that Rachel's servants own in fact, that was correct, because Rachel's servants' children came before Leah's servants' children. Because after Rachel could not have children, she then decided to put her servant in, and she had hers. And then Leah said, "Well, your servant can have mine, could have two," and you have this situation. So and one of the things that you will realize is, we talk about dysfunctional families today, but Jacob's family is very dysfunctional. It is a very dysfunctional family, and it takes God to have a whole lot of patience with them to get them to where He wants to get them, because they are very dysfunctional throughout the whole thing. And even, not only Jacob, but you find it with the whole patriarchal line. You could tell, even with Abraham and Sarah and Sarah, Hagar, and they all come down the line. There is that dysfunction in the family. So it tells us, though. It tells us is that with God, it doesn't mean that you have to be perfect, because even from that line, he chose. He was able to still chose that line for as the promised seed. Verse 27 to 29, Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. And Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people, old and full of years. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. And note here, you will see that Esau's name is mentioned first again instead of Jacob, although Jacob is the promised seed. And it is quite possible that it could have something to do with the fact that Esau being the oldest, and he was the one that Jacob really loved. Not Jacob, sorry, Isaac really loved over Jacob. But you see it mentioned here. Any questions? No questions.
Well, they kept referring to Jacob as Jacob, but I thought his name was Israel. So then,
Yes, it
so
is.
that's a little
But yeah, they still refer to
confusing.
him as Jacob. But yeah,
But Jacob's favorites were Joseph and Benjamin, correct?
Jacob's favorite children.
Yeah.
Well, we know his favorite son was Joseph. That was his favorite son. We would presume that Benjamin could have been, as a result of the fact that when he lost Jacob, or thought he had lost Jacob, and the boys went to Egypt
When
to
he
get
lost
food.
Joseph,
Like he said, when he lost Joseph. Yeah, when he lost Joseph. When Jacob lost Joseph, when his sons sold him off to Egypt, you will remember that when the boys do go to Egypt to buy food so they can eat when the famine happened, this time now Joseph is now a governor of Egypt. He sent for he sent for Benjamin, but also the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, and he wanted to keep Benjamin. And you would have realized that when he wanted Benjamin to come, Jacob did not want him to go in the first place because he had already lost one from Rachel, and he didn't want to lose the second child as well from Rachel. So if that is any indication that he was the second favorite, maybe, but we know that Joseph was the favorite.
So Jacob was the governor of Egypt?
No, Joseph was.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Then
Joseph became the governor of Egypt after he was sold into Egypt by his brothers.
okay.
He became the governor of Egypt. And you will learn more about that when we start back in the fall, because we are going into Joseph now next.
Okay.
We'll be talking about Joseph next. And he's another interesting character. So yes. There's a lot to Joseph and what he went through and how he saw
Hang on just a sec.
how he saw himself and how his brothers disliked him and all this sort of good stuff. And so you will start to learn about Joseph, and Joseph takes us down then into just before Exodus starts. You will find that in fact, it is interesting because Joseph does not live a whole long life, because he and his father died around the same time. Jacob, that is, they will both die in Egypt. So you will realize that I don't remember how old was, let me see, how old was he when he died? I don't recall.
who, Jacob or Joseph?
I think Jacob was 147 years old when he died, but I don't ever remember how old Jacob was, but Joseph was, sorry. I'm looking to see if it tells you when Joseph dies.
Joseph, in Genesis 50,
Uh-huh.
I'm just reporting 110.
Verse 10, you said?
He was 110.
Oh, he was 110. Right, right. Oh, well, he did live. I mean, his father lived to 147. I think that, um, I think that is, his father had lived to 147, I think. And as you realize, the ages keep coming down because, well, not quite, because Isaac lived a little longer than his father did, because Abraham only lived to 175, I think it was. And now we heard that Isaac lived to 180. So he lived a little older than his father did. But then you find that Jacob lives to 147 and Joseph to 110. And you see the ages started to go down. Yeah.
Right.
Any questions, anyone?
No.
Are their years the same years as ours?
No.
If their years are the same years as ours, good question. I will tell you this. That is a question that we cannot really answer, especially when it comes to those who are living to 900 and something years old. I think with those ones, it was a very big question mark, but you will realize that after the flood, God shortened the lifespan of humanity to 120 years. So you will see that the lifespan after the flood took place, and because of how people were before the flood, God said, "Nah, I can't keep people living for so long and being so terrible." And I'm paraphrasing that, and He cut it down to 120. And you will see later on as you go through in the Bible, when it comes to by King David's time, He's going to cut that age down to 70, which is the age that we now call the allotted lifespan age that God has given us. And it works the same way, whereas you see God cut it down to 120, you still saw people like Abraham and Isaac living to more than 120, and Jacob living to more than 120 years. The same way, even today, you see, although the lifespan is 70, people still live to 100 and 105 and, and that kind of thing. So, and 80 and 90 and all that sort of stuff. So, but to say whether or not the age or the length of time was equivalent to ours, I will say certainly not before the flood, that it will probably not have been the same. After the flood, I'm not sure. Yeah. Yes, Susan, you were going to say something?
My son,
Huh?
this is my son.
Oh, your son. Now, what is his name, Susan?
So he's down helping me do some projects. So we're putting
What is his name, Susan?
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Nice to meet you, Jeremy.
Very nice to meet you.
He's down helping me with some Mother's Day projects. So
Oh, Sunny do list.
Post Mother's Day.
my Sunny
It
do
always is Mother's Day when it's
my Sunny do list. I call it. So anyway,
Good,
Sunny
good.
too.
well, he's here.
But you know what? The good thing is he's helping you, and that's what counts. So he's a good son. He's helping
Yeah,
you.
and we got it done. So at least we got one thing checked off. So.
All right, good.
Okay. Anyway,
Well, nice
he's
meeting
down
you,
from
Jeremy.
Chicago,
Nice meeting you,
so.
sir. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. You have.
We're going to do
Yes.
Joseph next.
Yes,
So
we
that's
will be going in
continuing-
you could spend the summer reading from chapter 37 right through to the end of Genesis, because
I don't think so.
all of that has to do with Joseph.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Good.
All of that has to do with Joseph.
So
Joseph
that'll
is
be
Joseph
September.
takes up quite a lot of the book, actually. 13 chapters of it, so 14
Okay.
chapters of it. So you can read Joseph.
That's what Linda thought. So that's September?
Yes, probably late September. Yes, late September.
Good. That works better because we have family plans.
All right. Well, it works. It
We
works.
do. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome, everyone. Good night, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a great
Bye.
summer.
Bye.
Have a good summer.
Bye, guys.
Have a good summer.
Bye.
Bye, Ted.
Bye. Bye.